and welcome to our Maui County 2022 candidate election. Today we have Tamara Goebbert, who is running for State Senate seat number 6, and that includes West Maui and South Maui. Tamara, welcome. Nice to have you with us.
Hi, aloha, good afternoon. I hope everybody's having a good day so far. Thank you for having me.
So Tamara, I'm going to start with just a question about your background. Could you just tell our audience about your civic engagement and what you've been involved with on a state level and why you feel that you would like to run for this important Senate seat?
Yeah, okay, no problem. Aloha, everybody. My name is Tamara Goebbert. So I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was raised here in Kihei. My mom's family actually moved from Samoa to Kalihi, to the projects in Kalihi to search for a better life. And when they grew older, they eventually moved out to the mainland for more opportunities. So I graduated with 2 degrees, one in journalism and the other in political science. And while I was so I went to Northern Arizona University for my first 2 years of university. And while I was out there, I was a student reporter, a student broadcast reporter for the only broadcast station out there in Northern Arizona. And my 3rd year of university, I transferred to UH Manoa, and I wrote for the school paper there. So I guess mostly my background is in journalism. So in 2020, I interned for Senator Donovan Dela Cruz, who is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. And this past legislative session, I had the opportunity to work for the chair of the Water and Land Committee, Representative David Tarnas. And because of that, I was able to experience firsthand the legislative process. However, it wasn't necessarily my intention to about becoming a legislator myself at that point. So what got me interested in becoming a legislator was when I attended a highway cleanup for a representative. And we were talking story, and I mentioned that I was from Maui. And, it was brought up in conversation that I could run for office. And it's kind of a big step from where I was, but here I am. And, while I was pursuing my education, I had really enriching conversations with people my age, and, a little older as well. And they voiced their priorities, as a younger generation. And I felt the need to bring them to the spotlight. And now I have the opportunity to do so. So here I am.
Well,
I am doing that.
You mentioned your work in your legislation work, working with the water and water bills. Could you tell us specifically what you've done? Because obviously here in Maui County, water is a huge issue. And what were your representative that you were working with, what was he involved in terms of that water bill, and how would it affect Maui County?
So he was actually a representative for the Big Island. So he mostly passed, since he was the chair of the Water and Land Committee, we had a lot of legislation come through regarding that. However, how it affects Maui County, I did not look further into that. Once again, I was not necessarily thinking about running, so I wasn't necessarily looking too much into that. But in terms of water, I do think that we need to revisit who is getting what percentage of the water allocated to them. Is it okay if I go on that route just because?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, even though I am not completely familiar with all of the bills that had passed through our committee, I did think a lot about who is getting what portion of water here in Maui. And even though the state owns the water, it is being leased in large part to Alexander and Baldwin. And that, sorry, excuse me. Ooh, so it's not being leased to, it's not going to our local farmers. It's not going to the Kalo farms. It's not going to our true affordable housing. It's going, water right now is being allocated to these corporations. And housing that is, one, not affordable to Hawaii's people, and also probably being purchased by out-of-state buyers, which we do need to address. And so we need to fix the distribution systems, especially because we have open ditch systems which spill and evaporate. The diversion dams need to be updated because it is, in fact, old technology. It is from the 19th century, and it is at risk of being washed away, especially if there's heavy rainfall, which we've experienced twice on Maui, recently on Kauai. And because Alexander and Baldwin own the all of the stream diversions and ditch systems, I believe that we need to hold them accountable. And they say that they're here to enhance the way of life for Hawaii's people. It says it right there on their page, yet they're not taking care of these systems and they're robbing people of this resource. So as these things are in motion and are changing, I think we should encourage rainwater harvesting. That is something that I have been looking into and doing more research in. Or even the county of Maui had a rain barrel catchment program. And I think that is a good way. It was a program, it was a giveaway, but I think we should encourage everyone, especially the corporations and the hotels, so not just our families, to invest in rain barrels, because it helps reduce storm water runoff. It helps reduce erosion. It'll help reduce your water bill. It could decline. Your water bill could decline. And it'll help our community be more resilient in the future, especially in these times of drought. And also I do think we need to continue to encourage our families, educate our families about ways that we can at home conserve our water while we are setting these plans in motion. So for instance, maybe for your garden hose, getting a water nozzle for your shower, getting a switch to turn it on and off while you're showering. Because sometimes people, when you condition or when you're shaving your legs, you're not necessarily using the running water. So things like that. So the majority of the wasteful water practices are being done by the tourism industry, which we need to keep accountable because they do little benefit. They barely benefit local and Native Hawaiian populations on Maui, who are already bearing the brunt of conservation efforts every drought season and currently right now. So
great. Well, thank you for that response. And next we'll have Bruce Douglas.
Aloha.
Hi.
One of the biggest issues in Maui County and across the state right now is affordable housing and affordable rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Rents have gone sky high. Houses are out of people's reach of being able to qualify for. Mm-hmm. And it's a big issue. If you were elected to state senate, what would you do to deal with this situation of affordable housing and affordable rentals?
Okay, well, an idea that I have been looking into, or something that is already in place, is the income-based housing. So there is already income-based housing, but one, it's really selective, and two, there's already a really long waiting period to get into these areas, and also there is a cap to how much people can make in order to be qualified to live in these places. So in terms of affordable housing, I would advocate for more income-based housing. See if we can get rid of that cap. I would also advocate for our minimum wage. It also could help. Just saying $12 an hour at the end of this year is not enough. That's like $23,000 a year. That's before taxes. That's not enough. So I would definitely see what we can do to fasten the minimum wage bill, advocate for and push for legislation that will, and grants and things that will, in fact, but build more rent-based, affordable housing opportunities.
Thank you. And to dovetail on that, we also have the homeless situation, because Hawaii is a wonderful place to be homeless compared to other parts of the world, particularly on Oahu, even more so than Hawaii and Maui. If you were elected, well, how would you deal with the homeless situation and improve that?
Already looking into all of these different homeless or houseless initiatives that are already in place. This is something that hits home for me just a little bit because I have a family member that has experienced homelessness, houselessness. And I would, continue to see what we can do to fund different programs to get our houseless off the streets, especially with rehabilitation programs as well. And also sorry, what? Oh, nothing. Sorry, I thought you said something. Did you just clear your throat? Okay.
Clearing my throat.
I would advocate for and push for more funding for these initiatives that are already in place for houselessness.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Anne.
Sure.
Tamara, I had the pleasure of meeting you at Down to Earth the other day. So I want to ask about areas that you represent, places like Wailea, Lahaina, Ka'anapali. These are areas that are deeply affected by tourism. And I saw the statistic recently by the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism that on the average number of visitors here or tourists here on any given day, as of this statistic is from February 2022, is 61,218. That's twice as many as the previous year. So what do you know has been done already, and what could be done on the state level to address this problem with over-tourism that affects our ability, our infrastructure is difficult, and the ability to accommodate this number of visitors here?
Okay.
How do we address this over-tourism problem?
Okay. Well, historically, Hawaii's economy post-overthrow has been controlled by powerful American continental corporations such as the Big Five and now mainland resort chains. So first it was, our focus was on agriculture, and now it's on tourism, which are both predatory and exploitive industries built on the backs of indigenous and local bodies for labor. So I propose that we move away from tourism and take a look at agricultural alternatives to the historic monocropping industries of the past. So instead, we should consider agroforestry based on the model practiced by Kekulanui o Waimanalo in their Ulu Pono Mahi Āina project. So this model is much more eco-friendly and I believe can be led by master gardeners such as those certified by the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources at the University of Hawaii. And at least with this, it encourages self-sufficiency in the islands as well as food sovereignty. And so I learned of agroforestry from a student at the Myron B. Thompson School of Social Work and Public Health, who had the opportunity to actually learn all of this from faculty and community leaders spearheading the initiative over on Oahu. And from my understanding, it encourages a cycle of biodiversity. And so I look forward to learning more about it as my campaign moves forward.
So, but what could we do to, or what has been done, or what more could be accomplished at the state level to limit the number of tourists or visitors here?
Okay.
Have any idea on that?
So we could reintroduce like bills on green fees on tourism. We could probably, I know that there was a study that had been done by the LRB. And I believe that was related to the carrying capacity. And I'm actually, so I'm still continuously learning about all of this as I'm moving along. But I do know that we can reintroduce green fees. And I know that there have been reservation systems implemented for tourists to go to our state parks. So those have been put in place. And so those are some things that have already been implemented right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we'll have Alan Lloyd.
Aloha, and I'm going to see if I can say your name right. Tamara. Did I say it right? If I didn't, correct me.
It's Tamara.
Tamara?
Tamara.
Tamara. Okay. Tamara. Okay. I want to get it right. Okay. So I have two questions. First is, what do you think the legal minimum wage should be in 2022?
Okay, well,
In Hawaii.
not $12.
Right.
Not
so
$12.
What do you think it should?
Well, looking at what it costs to live right now, and looking at the average cost to even just have a studio, rent a studio here. Let's see. So right now, the current proposal, or what's actually going to be in October, $12, $23,000 a year, $1,900 a month before taxes, and it's about $1,600 average to have just a studio. So I would say maybe, not even maybe I would go up to 18 this year and go from there, maybe even 20. By 2028, that's not going to do anything. $18 in 2028 at the rate inflation is going, and at how the economy is now, I think something actually needs to be done about that. It should not be $12 at all. At this rate, people are having to work at least 3 jobs, and I don't think that's okay. So.
Okay, and what would you do if elected to go for that goal of increasing the minimum wage at a faster pace than Senate Bill 2018 did?
I would draft new. I mean, I would have to. Okay. My first thought was go to the governor. That was the first thought that came to mind. I would start maybe draft a proposal, perhaps, and have people sign on to it, because I don't think our community, our local families can survive off of $12 an hour. So I will do what I can to fast track that $12 an hour this year.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm going to ask the next question, and it has to do about our education system. And obviously, there's a lot of control that happens on Oahu that affects our education system here in Maui County. What would you propose to do when you look at, especially the money that goes from our taxes over to Oahu and then what we get back here in Maui County, and the issue also with retention of teachers? What would you do to address that issue?
Okay, well, to address that, so when I'm thinking of our education system, I'm thinking of, okay, I'll make the link between our education and also jobs, but I would continue pushing for more funding for more comfortable working spaces, see what we can do, because teachers are already, let's see, we've already passed legislation or we've already advocated for higher pay for Hawaii's teachers. So let's continue pushing for that, and also for so okay, I'm gonna tie in our economy right now. So currently, we are moving more into like a technological dependent era, and so and the majority of all professional trades on Maui are they're incorporating innovative strategies into practice. And so I think that we should put more technological opportunities in our schools. And in terms of teachers, we do, we definitely, I'm sorry. Can you?
Yes, and so let me just add on to that. You know, right now, again, we have a lot of our school board is then basically based out of Oahu. And would you advocate to have a county school board? Is that something that you would advocate for, to have more home rule for our education?
I think that would be a great idea. I mean, why should Oahu have all of the resources? I think that would be good to have a school board here on Maui as well. I would advocate for that.
Great, thank you. Bruce, you have the next question. If not, let's go to Anne, and if you could. Anne, you're on mute right now.
Yeah, I had a hard time getting that off of mute. I want to ask about infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure that's like such as roads is dependent on state and even federal funding. Where do you think in your area, which could use the most grants and subsidies for that?
Okay.
Because you do have a growing population over there in Kihei, Wailea.
So in terms of infrastructure, so I was looking at Oluwalu and also South Kihei Road. South Kihei Road, for as long as I can remember, not as long as I can remember, for years has been decaying. And there was, I remember, so for several years, there had been, for example, there had been like this little pothole in the middle of the road and just kept growing over the years over by Kalama Park. And they finally just filled it, but we should not just be filling it. We need to definitely repave that road. Oluwalu as well needs to be addressed. Their bus stops as well. So Kihei has sheltered, lit bus stop areas, and we also need to make that change over in Lahaina as well. Sidewalks in Lahaina. So I guess for me, right, my main priorities would be fixing the roads and adding bus system or like bus shelters in the Lahaina area. Those would be my main infrastructure concerns right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bruce, if you want to go next.
You elaborated earlier on agriculture, and I'm going to have you talk more about that. If you were elected, how would you promote truly sustainable agriculture, truck farming, agriculture, and help transition Hawaii from plantation to food for the people?
I'm sorry, you cut off that the last part.
Oh,
I heard.
How would you transition from plantation economy agriculture to agriculture that's set for feeding the people and local agriculture and diversified agriculture? If you were elected, what would be your program? What would you do?
So I'm looking more into different different solutions to grow our local agriculture, and so that we can be more sustainable, self-sustainable. So I currently, besides what I've already spoken about, had mentioned, I'll have to talk more about that more in depth when I have done my more research.
Okay. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Alan Lloyd.
All right, I'm back again. And as you probably know, and you have mentioned, I think that rents are going up substantially. And in fact, in the area that you're renting, there is a building called Lahaina Crossroads Apartments, which is planning to evict all their tenants, renovate, and then double the rent. And most of these tenants are elderly. And so what is your thought about residential rent control?
Residential rent control. Well, one, I was not aware about the Lahaina Crossroads situation, and that does not seem that is baffling to me. So residential rent control. I mean, okay, so first, what comes to mind is who counts as a resident. Of course, people who live here, right? But anybody moving from the mainland could be, they're moving, so they are technically residents. So when we're talking residents, I think we should probably narrow that down to people who have lived here for, I guess, over a year. Let's start it small. But resident rent control, maybe implement a Kama'aina rate. Is that what you mean in terms of rent control? Kama'aina.
So many jurisdictions have a cap on how much an owner can increase the rent each year. So that's generally residential rent control. And then there are other policies that go with it. One is if you're going to evict someone, you have to give them 90 days notice, and you have to pay them relocation assistance.
Okay, and is that what, so I'm actually very unfamiliar with the Lahaina Crossroads situation and talking on rent control. But is that what Lahaina Crossroads is doing? Are they going to be paying for the elderly to be relocated until they're done with the renovations?
They have to move out by June 30th, and they have to find another place themselves. And many of these people are in their 70s. Many of them are Native Hawaiians. Anyway, what's your thoughts on residential rent control? That's like having a cap on rent, so you can, for example, only increase rents 10% a year. And that's only an example.
Okay, so in terms of rent, there would have to be there would need to be a plausible reason for somebody to increase rent. They can't just increase rent. So property tax increase. So is this, like I said, I'm very unfamiliar with this term. So is this something that like they're taking into account property tax with the residential rent control? Is property tax increasing? Is that why they're, or are you saying that placing a cap on how much they're able to?
I'm looking for
I was
what
not
you
aware
think
that you
is on putting a cap on rents. That's usually what rent control is. On annual
okay.
or increases in rent. I want to know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, yeah, I think there should be a cap on how much you can increase rent. I mean, legally, unless your property tax goes up or, you know, major renovations. So I guess that also falls in with property tax. When major renovations are done, then that would be plausible cause for rent to increase. So I think that having a cap on it would be good. Instead of like every single year, 10% it would increase, 10% it would increase. There should actually be a cap.
Okay. And then the second part of the question is, considering small businesses, their highest cost are either staff or rent. And considering after the most serious parts of the pandemic, many small businesses could not come back to their spaces because they couldn't afford to come back to their spaces. What are your thoughts about commercial rent control?
So after a situation such as the pandemic, I think that there could have been a like maybe a discounted amount for especially small businesses. For rent control, for commercial rent control, I think that we could also implement a sort of an income, like similar income-based renting strategy for that, just because our small businesses, like most of them are mom and pop shops, and we want to support them as much as we can. And if they can't have their business because rent is too much and they're not necessarily like traffic isn't accumulating, then that's not going to be business, and they're not going to be able to pay rent. So I would say implementing a income-based rent strategy for commercial rent, especially for mom and pop businesses.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Tamara, I'm going to ask the final question. And first of all, we covered a lot of issues. And are there any issues that we have not covered that you feel passionate about, that you would help make some shifts and changes if you were part of the Senate?
We've covered the issues. I am actually also advocating for a shift in not a shift in our gun law and safety and education, but just kind of adding on to it. I was looking into it a little more, and I found that like there are no laws in Hawaii banning guns from bars. There's no laws banning them from school campuses. So that's also something that I would be advocating for, is just to kind of push for those initiatives. I know that gun violence is not super huge here in Hawaii, but it is increasing. It's increasing, it's happening. And I know it is hard to obtain guns here in Hawaii, but it's really easy to have them shipped in. So I think that that's something that we need to readdress and talk about further, especially to prevent any future acts that might occur here in Hawaii. So that's something that I would definitely talk about and am passionate for.
Great, thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our viewers right now in terms of your
Yeah,
background or attention? So go ahead. Yes.
sure. Okay. Well, yeah, I would add that I know that I do not have all of the answers right now, but I am committed to finding the answers and doing the research and meeting with professionals within our community that can talk about these things. I have a lot to learn, and I acknowledge that. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you guys for listening. And yeah, thank you.
Great. And so
Thank you, Tamara.
Tamara Goebbert, who's running for our state Senate 6. That's for West and South Maui. And those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, you can get all of our interviews at mauipononetwork.org and also at Akaku at channel 54. Mahalo for watching.